This is an original short story from Held Stories, a living archive of quiet human encounters. Here we try to create images of moments that are complete but not finished. Held Stories, Season 2, Episode 1. Her past was resolved before arriving home. He took off his boots at the front door. It wasn't typical, but neither was a meeting with foreign potential in-laws. Nor was it customary or expected, but Mark thought it best to leave his boots behind given the weather outside. Everything he could do to impress the new family, his girlfriend, was worth the effort. This took on new meaning 6 months ago when she nursed him back to health after a cancer scare. He knew at this point she was a keeper. Customs aside, life with her in it was very easy for him. He made sure to adopt some of her quirks and mannerisms into his own sense of inclusion. It did nothing for him but make him a better human in the process. Not to mention win brownie points with her and her family. The requests were already made. Her family was accepting of their marriage. It was now a matter of not messing it up. Mark had a history of failed relationships, but he always proved it wasn't his mistake. She was impeccable with her relationships, though she didn't have many. They made quite the couple with their mutual friends. Everyone wanted to know more about how they met and why they were so happy. He shook hands and gave hugs as Mark went about the room. It was a formal, informal dinner. A welcome to Mark and his soon-to-be permanent place with them. The aromas were to die for. There had to have been 10 different Ukrainian dishes on the smaller table, enough to feed 15 people. Mark only counted 7 in attendance, including himself. He thought this dinner would be the end of him. Eva's parents, 1 aunt and uncle, and 2 siblings began sitting around the table. They left Eva and Mark with the center of one side so everyone would be close and Mark would be sure to hear the conversation as it unfolded. Her parents were investors with a major firm out of New York. They worked remotely for the better part of 7 years to be closer to family. Her siblings found their place with engineering and the hard sciences, something Mark would understand quite well. And Eva's aunt and uncle were in sales, something to do with medical equipment, though Mark didn't understand the details. Per the norm for her family, they started with the meal to get the conversation going. Mark knew it might not be so in the Ukraine should he visit after the war ended, but he had no issues satiating his hunger immediately. Soon after the dishes were passed around, the main course disappeared. Even Mark knew he would enjoy this culinary delight. The conversation was light, mostly in English, but for Eva's aunt and uncle was in Ukrainian. Many times the siblings would translate a summary for Mark's benefit. After studying Ukrainian for the past 6 months, however passively, Mark nodded and agreed his way through. He didn't understand all of what was said, but even Eva knew he didn't miss much either. Eva would practice Ukrainian with Mark daily, making certain to not go beyond his level of study. In the previous 3 months, he exceeded beyond conversational due to her involvement. Another reason he was so smitten. Though she said it wasn't him to feel this way, but her family was dying to hear him speak full sentences, so these kind of dinners can be wholly in Ukrainian. He couldn't wait for Christmas when the largest meal was served, and he would be at least fluent by then. Making their way down the table, everyone was sure to include everyone else. Eva was quite often exposed to Mark for many things she did in her past. More embarrassing moments were shared to give Mark a full understanding of what he was getting into. Her siblings were more than interested in Mark's history and how he ended up single at the right time to meet Eva. The story was told 1,000,000 times if it was told once, but her siblings couldn't get enough of it. It finally seemed to Mark Eva's family was as dumbfounded as their friends were, but for different reasons. They couldn't wait for nieces and nephews running around and for a new face to become accustomed to at major family gatherings. It was Mark that scooped Eva out of a depression, though he never knew for 6 months, and made her smile on a regular basis. All he did was be the person he was, and it worked for her. Mark would make sure to join in the conversation as more than just a storyteller. He would interject his opinions on engineering and law only to be corrected more than once. This wouldn't deter him. He knew bending was not a good idea, so even if wrong, Eva spent more time encouraging him to be corrected and stand tall than she did being silent. The night went by as it normally did, the room drowned in conversation and joviality. After the dinner and all farewells, Eva wrapped herself around Mark's arm as they walked to the car. This was what she always did to imply how amazing Mark was with her family, a family who, as she puts it, can be difficult with new members. This makes Mark smile every time he feels her so close. He knows the next week will be a good one because of the night they shared. Arriving home, the pair wind down with a glass of wine each and just lean into each other in silence. Enough was spoken throughout the night that both Mark and Eva were vocally exhausted. Sip after sip, neither person wanting the night with each other to end, they nursed their glasses. Mark stared at the mantel of the fireplace, Eva at the fireplace itself. Eva signaled her desire to fall asleep by rubbing her cheek against Mark's. She gathered the glasses and put them in the kitchen sink. The next morning came, and the pair made lunches for the week. Eva enjoyed heavy meals while Mark was on the lighter side of things. On occasion, Mark would partake in a Ukrainian lunch Eva would prepare, but mostly he left the cooking to himself for his lunches. Many of the Ukrainian dishes tended to make Mark tired at work. Being an engineer himself, it wasn't advised to fall asleep on the job. His boss would probably laugh it off, but it wasn't like Mark to even contemplate such a direction. Taking to his movies after preparing lunches, Eva would run the domestic bandwagon. Her job in graphic design was easier and less entailed than Mark's, and as such, since they moved in, she would stare Mark down every time he thought of cleaning something. Even cooking for himself was wholly justified or he wouldn't be allowed. Not a custom, entirely Eva being Eva. One cancer scare was enough. She didn't want him to go through another such event. Making sure to sit beside Mark on occasion, Eva would pull out her phone and reply to text messages and emails. This movie was more of a romantic comedy than anything, but it still left Eva ignoring the whole situation and reverting to more pragmatic considerations. She loved Hollywood, but to her, it was best left in the theaters. One text that came through that had Eva jolting upright on the couch. Mark glanced over, saw her worried expression, and asked, "Everything okay?" "No, not now. My ex, he found my new phone number." "The stalker?" "Not a stalker, Mark." She glared briefly at him. "He can't easily let me go. What are we going to do about this guy?" "Have you spoken to your parents?" "No, I don't want them getting involved." Eva thought for a few moments. "I suppose you are right, Mark. This is beyond us." Eva began hurriedly typing a text to her parents, explaining the situation. After sending the text, she sat on the couch staring at her phone. "Relax, Eva. He isn't going to reach to the phone and do anything." She smiled at him, recognizing the joke. "I know, but what if he has our address? He isn't hostile, just confused." Mark rubbed Eva's leg. "Your parents never ignore you. Relax, let them reply whenever, and enjoy the movie." Mark chuckled, trying to make light of the situation. Eva frowned. "Yes, Mark," was all she said. 2 minutes later, as if on cue, her parents replied. "My parents said they'd look into it." "Mark, I'm not sure how to take that." "Knowing your family? Not well for him. Rest assured he will get the message." Eva rubbed up against Mark and smiled into his arm. "Okay," came a muffled comment. The As soon as Eva returned to doing the domestics, Mark pulled out his own phone and texted a friend he didn't often speak of. He asked his friend to investigate anyone who might be inquiring as to their address and let Mark know what she finds. Quickly the response arrived. She agreed, and Mark returned to his movies. Tuesday came and went. Mark's days were full of ups and downs. This was until the afternoon when the friend he texted on Sunday replied, and she said, "The problem is resolved. I won't say how." Mark looked quizzically at his phone in that text. It wasn't like her to be vague in this way. He shrugged it off, knowing not to ask, and took her comment for what it was worth. After returning home, he gave Eva a hug, kissed her on the cheek, and asked how her day was. She mentioned not hearing from her ex once that day. She mentioned how her project was coming along like a steroid-ridden bull on crack, and she asked why the hug and the kiss on the cheek, knowing it wasn't normal for Mark. He simply smiled and explained the situation with her ex was dealt with. She cocked her head to one side and stared at him, just as quizzically as he stared at the text. "How?" she asked. Mark rubbed the back of her hand, explained how he didn't know and wasn't going to ask. Eva took this to mean the friend he didn't often speak of was involved somehow, and grabbed Mark's hand, kissed it, and went to make dinner. Mark retired to the small office they set up for each other and replied to some emails until he heard Eva's call to dinner. This has been Held Stories. Held Stories is maintained as a living archive of created images of moments that are complete but not finished. Editions will be made available as they are prepared for those who wish to retain them and support their preservation. For those interested, please visit www.heldstories.org for more information.